The Queen Elizabeth II halfpenny coins of 1958 and 1960 represent the final years of one of Britain's oldest and most historic denominations, marking the end of coinage tradition that stretched back over 1,000 years. And these small bronze coins carry enormous historical, cultural, and collectible value today. Introduced during the early reign of Queen Elizabeth II, the halfpenny continued the classic British design language, with the obverse featuring the youthful portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, designed by Mary Gillick, showing the Queen facing right with a laurel wreath in her hair, surrounded by the Latin inscription, Elizabeth II Dei Gratia Regina FD, symbolizing her role as Queen by the grace of God and Defender of the Faith, while the reverse proudly displays the iconic Golden Hind sailing ship, a powerful symbol of Britain's maritime dominance and exploration heritage, first introduced on halfpennies during earlier reigns and continued here as a tribute to national identity. Struck at the Royal Mint in bronze, composed primarily of copper with tin and zinc, the 1958 halfpenny was produced in relatively large numbers, yet high-grade uncirculated examples are increasingly difficult to find today due to decades of circulation and wear, while the 1960 halfpenny holds even greater importance as one of the final issues before the denomination was discontinued in 1969 ahead of Britain's decimalization, making it especially desirable among collectors who seek end-of-era coins. Although these halfpennies were everyday pocket change at the time, used to buy simple goods like sweets or newspapers, their value today depends heavily on condition, with worn examples remaining affordable, while brilliant uncirculated or proof-like specimens can command significantly higher prices at auctions, especially when free from corrosion, spotting, or heavy scratches. Collectors also pay close attention to strike quality, rim condition, and original mint. Luster, as bronze coins are particularly vulnerable to environmental damage over time. Beyond monetary value, the 1958 and 1960 Elizabeth II halfpennies are cherished as tangible reminders of post-war Britain, a period of rebuilding, modernization, and quiet transformation under a young monarch whose reign would go on to become the longest in British history. And for numismatists, historians, and casual collectors alike, these coins tell a story far larger than their size, representing the closing chapter of pre-decimal British coinage and the fading echoes of an age when even the smallest coin played a vital role in daily life. The Elizabeth II halfpenny of 1960 is a fascinating window into Britain's post-war history and one of the final chapters in the long story of the traditional British bronze coinage, because by 1960 the halfpenny was already becoming a coin of habit rather than necessity, yet it still circulated widely in everyday life across the United Kingdom. Struck in bronze at the Royal Mint, the 1960 halfpenny carries on its obverse the youthful portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, designed by Mary Gillick, showing the Queen facing right, wearing a laurel wreath, with a Latin inscription, Elizabeth II Dei Gratia Regina F laughing face : which translates to Elizabeth II, by the grace of God, Queen, Defender of the Faith, a design that symbolized a fresh beginning for Britain under a young monarch who had ascended the throne only a few years earlier in 1952. The reverse of the coin features the iconic Golden Hind, the famous galleon sailed by Sir Francis Drake during his circumnavigation of the globe, a powerful symbol of Britain's maritime heritage and imperial past, with the denomination halfpenny and the date 1960 clearly displayed, reminding us of a time when Britain's currency was still based on pounds, shillings, and pence, long before decimalization in 1971 changed the entire monetary system. Measuring approximately 25.5 millimeters in diameter and weighing just over 5.6 grams, the 1960 halfpenny feels solid and substantial in the hand, reflecting the craftsmanship of mid-20th century minting. And although millions were produced, making it a common date, collectors today still value it for its historical importance rather than rarity. The coin circulated during a period of social change. When Britain was rebuilding after World War II, consumer culture was slowly expanding, and everyday purchases like newspapers, sweets, or bus fares could still involve a humble halfpenny, making this coin a quiet witness to daily life in 1960 Britain. While most 1960 halfpennies are affordable and widely available today, examples in high-grade uncirculated condition, or with exceptional color and minimal, were sought after by collectors who appreciate original mint luster and sharp detail. And these better-preserved pieces can command higher prices compared to worn circulation coins. Ultimately, The Elizabeth II halfpenny in 1960 is more than just a small bronze coin. It represents tradition meeting modernity, the early reign of one of the longest-serving monarchs in history, and the closing years of a centuries-old currency system, making it a meaningful and nostalgic collectible for anyone interested in British history, royal coinage, or the everyday objects that once shaped ordinary lives. The Elizabeth II halfpenny of 1958 is one of those fascinating coins that quietly carries history, royal legacy, and collector intrigue all within its small copper body. And to truly understand why this coin matters, we have to travel back to post-war Britain, a nation rebuilding itself socially, economically, and symbolically under the reign of a young queen who had only recently ascended the throne, Queen Elizabeth II, crowned in 1953 and quickly becoming a symbol of stability and modern continuity for the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth. And by 1958, British coinage was undergoing subtle but meaningful transitions, with a halfpenny still playing a real role in everyday transactions, despite its very low face value. Used by working families for bread, milk, newspapers, and small daily necessities, making the halfpenny not just a coin, but a witness to ordinary life in mid-20th century Britain. And the 1958 Elizabeth II halfpenny features, on its obverse the youthful, portrait of Queen Elizabeth II designed by Mary Gillick, a sculptor whose work emphasized grace, realism, and approachability, showing the queen without a crown, her hair tied back with a laurel wreath, symbolizing peace, renewal, and hope rather than imperial power, with a Latin inscription, Elizabeth II Dei Gratia Regina FD, surrounding the portrait, meaning Elizabeth II by the grace of God, Queen, Defender of the Faith, a phrase deeply rooted in centuries of British monarchy tradition, while the reverse of the coin proudly displays a golden hind, the famous galleon captained by Sir Francis Drake in the 16th century, a ship that represents exploration, naval dominance, and Britain's maritime legacy, making this design especially meaningful because it connects modern Britain under Elizabeth II with the nation's historic rise as a global power, and the halfpenny itself was struck in bronze, composed primarily of copper with small amounts of tin and zinc, giving it that warm, brown tone which, over time, develops rich patina in circulated examples or brilliant red luster in well-preserved mint state coins. And in 1958, millions of these coins were minted at the Royal Mint, making them relatively common in circulated condition, but increasingly scarce in high grades, especially those with full detail, sharp lettering, and minimal surface marks, which is where collector interest truly begins, because while the average worn 1958 halfpenny may not be worth much beyond, nostalgia, uncirculated, or proof-like examples can command surprising premiums, especially when certified by grading services. And collectors look closely at strike quality, rim completeness, die alignment, and any unusual characteristics such as off-center strikes, die cracks, or minting errors, which can elevate the value significantly. And speaking of minting, the Royal Mint in the late 1950s was still operating largely with traditional techniques, meaning slight variations between coins were common, making each surviving example subtly unique. And the halfpenny denomination itself has a long history dating back centuries, but by the late 1950s, its days were numbered as inflation slowly eroded its purchasing power, and within just over a decade, the halfpenny would be withdrawn entirely following Britain's decimalization in 1971, making the 1958 issue part of the final chapter of pre-decimal British coinage, which adds emotional and historical value for collectors today, particularly those who grew up during that era or inherited these coins from parents and grandparents. And when you hold a 1958 Elizabeth II halfpenny in your hand, you are holding an object that passed through countless pockets, tills, and hands during a time when Britain was redefining itself culturally, from post-war rationing to the rise of television, rock and roll, and a new youth identity, all under the steady image of a young queen whose face appeared not just on coins but on stamps, portraits, and national celebrations. And collectors today often search for variations in color, from deep chocolate brown to red brown and full red, with red examples being the most desirable and rare due to copper's tendency to oxidize over time, and storage conditions play a huge role in preservation, meaning coins kept in dry, sealed environments decades ago are now the stars of modern collections. And while the 1958 halfpenny does not feature multiple mint marks like some international coins, its value can still increase through error varieties, including double dies or planchet flaws, which are highly sought after in the numismatic community. And beyond monetary value, the cultural significance of this coin cannot be overstated, as it represents a time when even the smallest denomination mattered, when coins were designed with artistry and symbolism rather than purely efficiency, and when everyday money carried stories of empire, exploration, and monarchy. And for YouTube, collectors, history lovers, or casual viewers, the Elizabeth II halfpenny 1958 serves as a gateway coin, an affordable yet meaningful entry into British numismatics, reminding us that history is not only preserved in museums and textbooks, but also in the small objects we once used without a second thought. And as prices for rare world coins continue to rise globally, interest in classic British bronze coinage has grown steadily, especially among international collectors in the United States, Australia, and South Asia, who see Elizabeth II coinage as both a historical artifact and a long-term collectible. And whether you find this coin in an old tin, a family inheritance, a flea market, or an online auction, its true value lies in the story it tells, a story of a young queen, a recovering nation, and a world on the brink of modern transformation, all captured in the quiet dignity of the 1958 Elizabeth II halfpenny.